A Sapphire Running Zone podcast.
Hi everyone, Tim from the Sapphire Running Zone, and this is episode 3 in our training support series. And today we're looking at race strategy and discussing how to get things right on the day. And this follows on from episode 2 where we looked at race week preparation. Well, this is now assuming that you've done everything right and you've got yourself onto the start line and we're ready for whatever distance you've got coming up. So what's really important with your race strategy is that it's about you and you don't worry about everybody else. And it's so easy, particularly at the start of a really big race, that you can be influenced by people around you. And that's inevitable, really. You get to the start, chances are it's going to be busy. And you look around and you look at what other people are doing, and even before the gun goes off, what are people stretching? Are they jumping up and down? Are they sprinting around? Don't be worried about what other people are doing. Be focused on yourself. You have done everything right. Don't worry about what others are doing. So when you get yourself into a position of doing a big race, let's say it's a big race, chances are you probably set yourself a race goal, even if it's a smaller event and it's maybe a build-up event for a bigger one. Chances are you in your head have some idea of what you're trying to achieve time-wise. A lot of people don't. A lot of people just go, I just want to finish. I'm doing this for charity. I just want to raise as much money as I can. I just want to get round. A lot of people will set themselves a target, a time target, and that can be a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. So the most important thing, particularly if you're doing your first race, a lot of people anticipate that they're going to get a quicker time than they actually will do. They're basing that finishing time maybe on what their mates have done or what they've done in training for a much shorter distance. So particularly when you're doing one of the big races, you have to obviously enter weeks and months in advance, and you have to tell them what your expected time is. So you're having to put down sometimes something like with London, for example, you're putting in a time when you've not even started training, and that's really difficult. So all the time I have conversations with people and they say, I'm going to do the marathon in 4 hours or 3.5 hours or 4.5 hours, whatever it might be. And that's based on little more than a hope, really. It would be great if. It's not really based on a lot more. So you need to get, if you're going to set yourself a target, make it really realistic. And it may be that you will do it in 4 hours, but base that expectation on something. Don't just base it on the fact that you did a really fast 5K once. And if you multiply that by 8 and a bit times, that will be your time for the marathon. It won't be. If your longest run is 20 miles and you work out per mile what that time was, and then assume that your marathon is going to be that plus whatever it was per mile for 6 more miles, it won't be. The last 6 miles of your marathon will be much, much slower than your first 20. Lots of reasons for that, but obviously you're going to be so tired, and if you haven't run any further than 20 before, it's going to happen. It's going to be very, very different. So just have a sensible expectation. A few years ago, I ran London, and I was training with a friend, and their absolute goal was 4 hours, and they ended up doing it in 4:02 or something like that, and they were devastated. Which to me doesn't make a massive amount of sense. They spent the last 5 or 6 miles of that race just weaving in and out of people, desperately trying to get under 4 hours. Why? 4:02 is a fantastic time. So, have a goal if you want a goal, but if you don't hit it, don't get upset that you don't hit it, is what I'm trying to say. 4:02 is a great time, and that person raised loads of money for charity, so everyone was a winner. But unfortunately, they didn't see it like that. They were just upset, which again is not what it's about. So what I've done here now is I've split the race into 4 different phases. Okay, so I've set the start, obviously, and then the early stages, the middle stages, and the last few miles. Okay, so 4 distinct areas. So let's look at the first one, the start. The bigger the race, the longer the start process takes. Generally speaking, the super big races will have a wave start situation where you go off at slightly different times. And this is why getting your expectations right is so important, because you don't want to be in the wrong start corral, as they call them, or pen. You want to be in the right one. And it's really hard, as I said, when you've got to give an expectation of your finish time so early on in the process. But you can go backwards generally if you think you got your time wrong. Difficult to go forwards. They won't allow you to go in a pen further up generally, but you can often go back. And that's what I would absolutely recommend that you do. If you put down that you're going to do it in 4.5 hours for a marathon, or 140 for a half or something, and you don't feel like you're actually going to achieve that, then aim to go in a pen further back. With a lot of the races, you can actually change your pen, probably up until about 3 or 4 weeks before the race. So just be thinking about that as well. Is it better to just go online and change your start time, your finish expectation, which will then allow them to put you in a different pen? So think carefully about that. You just don't want to be in a position where you are in a place with people that are going to run a very different time to you. When the gun goes off, you may well not start running straight away, as we talked about in the previous episode. But the further forward you are, chances are that you may well go off pretty much when the gun is fired. And you need to make sure that you're in with the right group of people. The last thing you want is for that gun to go, everyone goes sprinting off, and you go sprinting off with them when you're not ready to do that. And it's very easy at the start of a race to get caught up in the euphoria of it all, and the sheer energy that there is at the start of these big races. Well, any race, to be honest. So make sure that at the very start, you don't go off too quickly. Okay, don't just look at someone and think, right, I'm going to hang with them for the first mile or so because I reckon I'm fitter than they are. You might not be. So it's really, really important that you go at your own pace, because if you get that first couple of miles wrong, it's amazing the impact that can actually have on the whole of your race. So the next phase then is the early stages. And again, it's really, really important here that you settle into your own pace. Okay. You will have been waiting for this moment for quite some time, and it's so critical that you don't blow it by going off too quickly. So not only is the start a problem if you go off too quickly, but these first few miles can absolutely kill your race if you don't get it right. Particularly in a big one, you've got huge crowds, there's runners everywhere, there'll be people wanting to give you high fives, be music. It's just unbelievable atmosphere in these big events, and you want to enjoy it and be part of it, but you need to make sure you're doing that within your normal running pace. Okay, chances are you probably won't remember a lot of these early phases if you've not done a race before of this scale. It does go by in a bit of a blur, but you need to make sure that you've not allowed the euphoria and the excitement of it to impact on the pace that you're running at. Just settle down and stick to what you know. This is what you've done during your long runs. Stick to that pace. Do not go off too quickly. In the middle phases of the race, the middle stages, let's call it. So, for example, a halfway stage of a distance event, you inevitably, well, generally speaking, will start slowing down a little bit. And it's, again, really important that this is when the mental phase of your long run training starts to kick in. Okay. So you need to make sure that you keep a really strong mind here. You know you can do it, but you will be getting physically tired. And it's so vital that you keep going at the pace that you've been used to on these long runs. Don't listen to any negativity in your head. Okay, it's inevitable that there'll be part of you saying, "Oh, I can't. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. I can't do this." Don't listen to that negativity. It's a tough phase. This I'd say during the marathon, some of the marathons I've done in the past, there's been many occasions at the sort of 16 to 18, 19 mile mark where I've just thought, no, if I wasn't running for charity and raising money, I would just pack this up now. But don't be negative, be positive. Just think what an amazing experience this is, how lucky you are to be part of this, and just keep pushing on. A lot of races will not have huge crowds, so don't just assume that your race is going to have big crowds. There will be big crowds in the big races, the majors, and some of these other big city centre marathons. But don't assume that they'll be busy all the way around. They might not be. Some of the big half marathons that you hear about, don't assume that they're going to be packed with people. A lot of these races start really early in the mornings, and there's not necessarily going to be crowds deep all the way around the course. So a lot of this is about you, and it's about your mental strength. And there are parts of a marathon, particularly this phase now, this middle phase, where it is difficult. It is difficult. And this is where the importance of these long runs and following your training plan really kicks in. If you need to walk for a little bit, fine, then walk for a little bit. I often, when I've taken a break at a water station, I'll actually slow down at water station, drink the water properly, and then regard the next gap to the water station is my next target. So it might be that water at this point is every mile and a half. And I'll think, right, I've just got to focus on this next mile and a half. So break it down into phases. Don't be thinking, oh God, right, okay, I've done 15 miles. My next target is 20 miles. It isn't. Your next target is 16. Your next target is 17. Tick them off. Same with a 10K. Just break it down into the kilometers and just focus on each of them at a time. And you hear the expression, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It absolutely is. You just break it down into bits. Focus on your next interim goal, not the 26.2 finish point if you're doing a marathon. The last few miles obviously are just an amazing experience. Okay, so physically you'll probably be feeling a bit worse for wear. How many occasions in the past when I've done a marathon or a half marathon have I felt just a huge mix of emotions? It's incredible. You know you're going to be able to do it, but honestly, it just seems sometimes in a marathon, that last 6 miles, for example, can be just torturous. But you need to go into these events knowing that it is going to be tough. Even if you've done your long run of 20 miles, it will be tough. And this is why it's so important that you have mental strength. The crowd can make a massive difference if you're in a busy race. So let's talk about London Marathon. The last 6 miles of London Marathon is probably my favourite 6. Along the embankment, the crowds are incredible. You've got amazing charity cheer zones, some of the scenery along the river, and then you turn down, you've got Big Ben, House of Parliament, Birdcage Walk, Buckingham Palace. It's just amazing. And you find something, your body just seems to be able to do something extra. Doesn't matter how tired you might be at mile 23, you get to mile 25 and all of a sudden you seem to be able to find something extra. And that's what you've got to be thinking about all the time. You've got to be thinking mentally, you've got to be so strong, but you've also got to make sure that you've hydrated and you've taken your nutrition. Your race strategy doesn't just depend on your training. It absolutely depends on how well you have followed sort of nutrition protocols, if you like. So let's talk about those. So are you hydrating properly? Are you drinking properly? So as you know, there's water provided on the vast majority of courses, aside from the very, very small ones, and even those will probably have water. now and again on a very small local 5K, you'll find there'll be water somewhere. These big events particularly, they all have medical directors. They all know what they're doing. They all put water at locations where you need it. There may be occasions, if it's a really hot day, where there might not be enough water for everybody. And that's really rare, though. So generally speaking, you're going to be fine. So you don't need to take water with you, but you need to make sure that you are drinking it at every water station. Okay. So even at mile 1, mile 2, mile 3, where you don't think you need it, you need to make sure you take it. You really do. It's imperative. You never want to be at the point of a distance event where you're feeling thirsty, because at that point, it's almost too late in effect. So you need to make sure that you're sipping water at every water station. And it might be that they have open cups or very tiny little bottles of water. Take one and just sip it, and just make sure that you don't just take a little bit and then chuck the whole thing away. So you often see people in big marathons, for example, who will take a little bottle of water and just keep it with them until the next one. I wouldn't say it acts as a comfort blanket exactly, but it's a great thing to have one with you, because you can just keep sipping. The worst thing you can do is to just take it all in one go, because that will give you stomach problems. You just won't feel right. So just take a bottle, sip a little bit, and then sip a little bit more. Don't just take it, glug it, and chuck it. If you keep doing that all the way around, you will be properly hydrated. A lot of people will take water with them, and that's absolutely fine. That gives them, they know they're going to have water wherever they want it. But you shouldn't need to do that. But you should sip all the way around. So there is a condition where you can take too much water, and that's called hyponatremia. But generally speaking, that's not going to affect the vast majority of people. There will be some people who will drink too much, but not that many. So just take your water, sip it, and then take some more at the next water station and sip it. All the way around these courses, there are people with, handing out sweets or bits of banana. In the big ones I'm talking about, there'll be members of the crowd who are giving you extra things. And you just got to think, do I want to be taking stuff from people I don't know, uncovered stuff? I mean, you've got to be cautious here. So I don't. If someone's offering a sweet at mile 20 and it's got a wrapper on it, then yeah, I might take that, but I wouldn't take something that was open, that had been touched by people. You just don't know. Again, it's all about being cautious. You don't want to let your race get ruined because you got something wrong on the day like that. Often the races will have fruit available, like bits of cut up banana and stuff, and that's great. And some of them will have the gels. And obviously, we'll keep talking in most of these podcasts about gels. I would absolutely recommend on a distance event, half marathon, that you do take gels, and you may have to take them yourself. There will be some available on the course, but as you know, you need to make sure you take gels that you're used to. So if you're planning to take gels on the day, make sure that you've been training with the gels that are offered on the day. If not, take them with you, and then be taking these probably from about mile 10 onwards for every hour or so. Again, this is why you need your water, because you have to take your gels with a bit of water as well, just to wash it down. And they're not the easiest thing in the world. And again, this is why your long runs are so important, because you can practice this stuff on your long runs. So rip the top off, take a little bit, wash it down with some water, take a little bit more. And it's a process that you can't always do when you run along. So sometimes it's best just to pull over at a water station, get a gel out, do that, sip the water, and then obviously dispose of the wrapper in the in any litter bins that they've got by the water station. So if you keep doing that, you will build your glycogen stores, and that will make a big difference. If you decide you don't want to take anything with you, you're just going to rely on the race, that's fine too. But just be aware there might not be gels or whatever it is that you're looking for at the points where you need it. They will have, they will tell you in advance where the stuff's going to be. but it might not be at the point you need it. Some races have strange things available on the course. I've done one marathon years ago where they had Coca-Cola available on the course, which again, this was flat Coke. So just towards the end, I think about mile 23, that's quite different because clearly I've not trained with that before. So everyone was taking it, and because it was quite late on in the course, it didn't have too much of a negative effect. But that's all about the sugar, obviously, and it did give me a bit of a lift. But at that point, in the last 3 or 4 miles of a race, you'll pretty much take anything, and it will be too late at that stage for it to have too much of a negative impact. But just be careful. And the point about gels, energy drinks, there will be energy drinks in most races, as well as the gels. Again, be used to it because it can have a really negative impact on your stomach. I did Boston and I took I think it was Gatorade, and I hadn't traded with that Gatorade because I couldn't get it in the UK at the time. And it absolutely killed me. It went right through me. It was they obviously in these big races they generally use syrup, which they mix with water, and it just it had a terrible impact. So, but I shouldn't have done it. I should have taken stuff with me. And sometimes you just don't think clearly in your training on the long runs. You don't think, right, what are they using? I need to make sure I practice with that. Or I'm just going to take with me what I'm used to. And generally speaking, even though you think you're not going to take the stuff, you will end up taking it on the day. It's pretty much inevitable. If you're feeling a bit weary and you go past a water station with a load of energy drinks available, I suspect that most people are probably going to grab one. So your nutrition is obviously a key part of your race day strategy. Now, when you get obviously to the last mile or so, something else just takes over, and it becomes just an amazing last mile. Whatever the distance you do in that last little bit is just amazing, and keep visualizing all the way through your race what that bit's going to look like. What's that last 300 meters going to look like? Keep thinking about that all the way through, because that will drive you forward.
And now it's time for Q&A.
Right, so we've got a couple of questions. First one from Mo in Worcester. Should I run a distance event with a friend? Well, that's a really interesting one, because what are the chances that you're going to find somebody to run a distance event at exactly the same pace as you, who's going to need a rest at exactly the same point as you? Probably not that great. And I would exercise a huge amount of caution with that, because you can end up feeling under pressure if you run with somebody else. It's really difficult to be able to do a long run with someone of exactly the same pace as you, let alone a distance event. There's so many variables, like, are they going to take gels? Are they going to need a gel at the same time? Are they going to need to stop to take it? I'll have to stop even though I'm not taking one. So I would say, if you have trained extensively with someone on your long runs and you are identical pace, then yeah, go for it. But the chances are that is not likely, and you will both end up putting pressure on each other on race day. So yeah, run with them for a mile or two or a bit more, but just be really cautious, because I think you'll end up putting more pressure on each other than you imagine. And we've got Ellie in Truro who asks about clothing. What should I wear? Should I wear a running vest or a t-shirt? Obviously, depends on the temperature to a degree. I would probably start off with both. If it's a cold day and the forecast is going to get a lot hotter, then you need to be thinking about both. So you need to think, well, actually, I'll have my running vest on underneath, but I'll keep a t-shirt on for the first few miles and see how I feel. Obviously, you've got the complication of the race number. Then you're going to have to put that onto your vest if you decide to get rid of your t-shirt. Obviously, remember, you're not going to see your t-shirt again if you chuck it away mid-race. There's nothing worse than being too hot in a marathon. And I know at the start, a lot of people go, oh, God, I'm freezing. I'm going to keep my jacket on. well, the chances are after a few miles you will be very hot. So you're better to be slightly cold at the start of a race than slightly too warm. If you feel comfortable at the start, chances are you've got it wrong. You need to feel a little bit on the chilly side. So wear both, but just remember you are going to have to take your race number off of your t-shirt and put it on your vest if you decide to discard your t-shirt. Right, so you've got to the finish line. You've had the day of your life. Now you're going to think about your next target, and we will talk about that in a future podcast. I'll catch up with you all again soon.
Thanks for listening to this Sapphire Running Zone podcast. Keep checking back as we have lots more podcasts coming soon.